Hey guys, what's up? Thank you so much for joining me today. It's the Canadian Fire Gal. It has been a while since I posted my last video, and that is because I recently started a new full-time job. From working in sales and having a very flexible schedule and working from home to having a regular office job like I do now, it has really taken up most of my time, and I haven't had a whole lot of energy after I get home from work to do the things that I actually want to do. That's one of the biggest things for me about pursuing FIRE is not necessarily the retire early part, but definitely getting to a place where I'm financially independent enough that I can choose when and where and how I work. So today's video is about how FIRE has changed my outlook on life. I want to delve into some of the key points about the way that I used to think about money and how going down the FIRE path has really changed those opinions. When I came into FIRE, I was about 23 years old and I had nothing in the bank at all. I had no savings and I had no real idea of how to manage my own money. It's something that I was never taught growing up. It was something that my parents never talked to me about and something I never really learned in school at any point. I think the biggest lesson that I've learned is that money is not an emotional thing, even though that's how a lot of people deal with money, is using their emotions or letting it manipulate their emotions. When you get to a place where you're a little bit more comfortable and you're making a good amount of money and you're able to save a little bit as well, you kind of get to this point where you can remove your emotional well-being and these emotions from money and how you deal with your funds. I mean, that goes without saying that, of course, I personally make emotional decisions when it comes to spending sometimes. If I'm in a crappy mood, I do find retail therapy is a very real thing. I think when it comes to FIRE, just getting into that whole saving mentality, I have began to think about money in a completely different way. Whereas instead of going out and just buying things that I want if I don't feel good, I like to put money aside and save it. And actually the act of me just moving my money from one account to the next is a boost, especially when those accounts are labeled for what I'm saving for. So right now I have a travel fund. Every dollar that I want to use for travel goes into that fund. I have a couple of other funds that are just specific to things that I want that are larger purchases. Life becomes really simple when you have money. That might seem incredibly obvious, but I personally have gone through the journey of growing up sort of middle class and then my parents divorcing and then having my mother support myself and my brother and herself when she worked 2 jobs at minimum wage. So I know how it feels to be at the very low end of lower class to the point where we were almost homeless a few times. And now coming back from that, doing all the research that I've done and basically getting to a point where I never want to be in that position has taken an incredible weight off of my shoulders. Life has become astoundingly more easy. I'm not as worried about money, or if an emergency happens, I will be okay. I have money set aside for emergencies, and just the mental aspect of that and having that freedom has been absolutely huge for my mental health. One of the biggest things that I've learned through the FIRE journey is that meaning has become my main pursuit in life now. Before, I'd say that I just wanted to make a lot of money and be able to buy things I wanted and go on very expensive trips and basically look like I was keeping up with everybody else. But after going through the whole FIRE journey and talking to people and reading stories about what they found is that even if you have a ton of money, it doesn't mean that you're getting that fundamental fulfilling meaning, purposeful. There's nothing really sacred about money. It's just a tool. So I moved out of a sales position because I felt that sales was soul sucking to me. I don't really have the right personality for it. I never really felt that I did. I did well. I made a lot of money at the time and I just kind of felt burnt out. So going into work that pays quite a bit less, but I know it's more fulfilling because I can see the work coming back at me right away with those returns in terms of making other people's lives better and easier. At some point, I'd like to be able to afford to just maybe volunteer or do work at an even lower rate. Something like working at a humane society, because I know that they make under $30,000 a year. It's not so much about retiring early. It's not so much about having the magic number in the bank and then just doing whatever I want. It's more about trying to find that kind of meaning and the work that brings me joy and makes me feel really happy, like I'm giving back to the world well before I get to my fire age. Or I get bored extremely easily. I don't do well without structure or a schedule, and I know that I would become very depressed very quickly if I didn't have something like work to help fulfill my life. And that's just the truth. It's not everybody's truth, but I know that it is for me. In getting into work though, work for me has always been secondary. Work never comes before my personal relationships. It never comes in between me and my beliefs, my moral beliefs, or any kind of ethical issues at work I would never stand for. Just knowing that I have fuck you money in the bank, meaning that I could walk out if I needed to, is massive. I think a lot of people are trapped in their jobs because they need the paycheck. They have a family to feed and they need the money. And if there is an ethical dilemma at work or something moral where you have to choose either a paycheck or your family potentially doesn't eat, that is absolutely insane. I think that it would be hard to sleep at night. Work being secondary really means that you should be focusing on building a life outside of work. And that is my number one tip to everybody who watches this, is that building the life that you want to retire to is the absolute most important thing. Work is so secondary because your workplace, unless you are maybe working for a very small company, they don't give a shit about you. It's about their bottom line. Another thing FIRE has taught me is that I really enjoy the simple things. I really have a lot of hobbies that don't cost any money, which include going for really long walks, going for bike rides, going for hikes, going and meeting friends in the park and just hanging out, doing things that are active outside, and none of that really costs any money. I really like spending quality time with my family and friends. My family is quite far from where I live, so it is an expensive flight when I do go and see them. But when I do get there, it is just kind of sitting around and chatting and hanging out, and that doesn't really cost a lot. And in going through all of this, I do still have material wants and I do still buy things, but I know that the amount of joy I get out of actually interacting with people that I love and doing things that I really enjoy outside gives me so much more happiness than just buying items. FIRE has taught me that time is the most valuable thing that we as human beings have. Trading your time for money is something you really need to take very heavily. I don't think a lot of people enjoy their jobs, and that's just maybe the way some people are, but you really have to think about trading your time, which is the most valuable thing you have in this world. It's the one thing you can never get back. Money you can always make more of later. You can always get a loan, get a credit card, borrow it. There's a million things you can do. Money is so unimportant in the grand scheme of things. Time is absolutely everything, and just being very conscious of how you're spending that time. Being on the FIRE path has also taught me that I need to be more giving. And what this means for me is that giving back to charities every year and making sure that people in my life who are struggling can come to me for help is one of the best things that has come from being on the FIRE path. Before, when I was living paycheck to paycheck, it never really crossed my mind that me accumulating more wealth and being able to save could ever impact other people in a positive way. Money was always seen as sort of this thing that other people had, that maybe you're not the best person if you have a lot of it. And now that I have a little bit of money in the bank and I'm able to give back every year and help people out that I love, it really just makes life a lot easier for me, and it makes me feel a lot better that I have the tools ready to help other people if they need it. So that's all for today's video. Thanks so much for joining me again, and I hope you really enjoyed this content. I'm working on more videos, and I'd love to hear from you guys and what you might want to hear about next. Leave me a comment below, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.